Hey everyone. Now there are horror movies that to me are like comfort food, sugary and salty. They make you feel good for a couple of minutes after you watch them. Now, the movies that I've got on this list in this video for you make me feel the same way. They are nasty, junky films, but they're a lot of fun. In fact, well, maybe not all of them are nasty and junky, but they're just those comfort movies that you love watching. So I'm the Adi Dance. You are watching Shockmania. You are going to see my 5 popcorn comfort movies, and here they are. Universally hated by every single Friday the 13th fan, and unjustifiably so. After 7 movies in the series where we've seen Jason's mother get decapitated after killing Kevin Bacon, Jason wearing a potato sack, a 3D release, and a based Corey Feldman finishing him off with what resulted in an unnecessary sequel, Jason finally leaves Camp Crystal Lake, although let's ignore part 5 for a minute, and heads to New York on a cruise ship. Well, he eventually gets there. Most of the movie is set on the boat, but when he does get there, we get some of the funniest scenes of the series, including that infamous mask reveal to the gangbangers, a uppercut that seriously inspired Mortal Kombat, and who could forget the face reveal at the end with the toxic waste. What a time to be alive when this movie came out. Too many people take this movie way too seriously. It should be approached only as a popcorn movie, and that's why I like it so much. That and Kane Hodder. Now this is yet another bastard of a movie title in a very popular movie series, and I still remember the day that this one hit the shelves of my local video store, because when I went in to rent it, the lady who owned the store had it hidden behind the shelf ready for me to take away. And what a fun time it was. A new slasher film in the middle of the 90s when producers were still brave enough to do something interesting with their films. Distributed by Dimension Films. That's the same people behind The Crow, Scream, and the Scary Movie movies. And produced by the Arquettes, who must have been rolling in their Halloween money by this point. The movie kinda follows on from part 5, but ignores the fact that Danielle Harris is still alive in real life and casts a kind of strange lookalike. But perhaps the movie is more famous for a few other things. For the first time ever, Paul Rudd is introduced to the world, and depending on your opinion of him, that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. It also attempted to introduce Mary Ann Hagen from the world of TV into cinema, but that didn't go so well for her. Or maybe you remember this because it was Donald Pleasence's last film. By the end of the title, you could tell he's barely hanging in there. But he was a trooper until the end and has been sorely missed in every Halloween title since this one. Or perhaps it's the fact that there are 2 wildly different versions of this movie out there. Different to the point where they have almost completely different second halves and endings. Either version I watch always brings a smile to my face, especially when that little girl exclaims, "Look mummy, it's raining. It's raining red." That's blood, dear. Now I think we can all safely agree that Saw is not a bad film, but it is definitely a popcorn film, even if a rewatch is kind of spoiled by the fact that you already know what happens at the end, right? Now, I only add the first movie to this list because it's only the first title that was influential to me. As a young Aussie lad, there is nothing I loved more than watching Aussie horror movies, as you'll see by the next movie on this list. But nothing infuriated me more than knowing that this film was made by Australians in Hollywood, because they couldn't secure the funding to make it here, a mistake that has hopefully never been made since. The first time I saw this movie was on a pirated DVD back in 2004, a few weeks before the eventual cinematic release here in Australia. I remember being glued to the screen, immersed in this thriller involving 2 unrelated men chained up in a bathroom with a dead body between them. I remember that ending, and when a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go to the cinema to watch it, I thought, yes, I jumped at the opportunity to watch this on a big screen. Because I wanted to be in the room with someone, anyone, when the big reveal happened. I had that same feeling for The Sixth Sense too. This movie had a cool official DVD release too, with a transparent cover showing off the disc inside that had a saw blade printed on the cover. And while this movie spawned more sequels and spin-offs that I've seen, and the ones that I have seen, I can barely remember anything about, except for that Chris Rock one. It's the first title that I will always want to go back and watch whenever I have a big bag of popcorn, a hankering for a gruesome horror film, and I need a reminder about how talented Australians can really be. I'm prepared to fight anyone to the death who dares to say that this is not a good film. Seemingly learning our lesson from letting Saw slip through our fingers, Aussie film producers couldn't jump on this script fast enough. A semi-true story horror thriller inspired by one of Australia's worst ever serial killers. But I'm sure as hell pretty confident that Ivan Milat was nowhere near as charming as Mick Taylor. This was the movie that every Australian horror fan needed to see in the cinema. If only for the fact that most of my generation grew up with John Jarratt on a TV screen as the presenter of a reality TV show called Better Homes and Gardens, and a handful of Aussie TV dramas. We kind of seemingly ignored, or were more likely oblivious to, the fact that he starred in one of the best Australian war movies in The Odd Angry Shot. Who could forget that famous quote that you could set your watch to this fucking rain?
By this fucking rain.
Wolf Creek was everything I loved about cinema. A brilliant bad guy who wasn't really bad, just misunderstood. Two annoying female leads whose deaths wouldn't be lamented, and a young Nathan Phillips still struggling to work out how to act. Luckily he figured that out before the brilliant These Final Hours, and I wouldn't have expected anything less from a boy from Sunbury. I could watch Wolf Creek again, and again, and again, and I probably should before the rumoured part 3 is released, because Mick Taylor is a damn fine Australian. Oh, and don't let this movie put you off visiting the outback of Australia, because murderous serial killers are the least of your worries. Now it's time to get back to the trash with a movie that you've never heard of unless you have watched some of the previous videos on my YouTube channel. This is classic modern Chinese horror at its most terrible, and I love it all the more because of it. Now, there are a lot of Chinese horror movies I could have given this last place to, but no movie represents the disaster of Chinese horror more than this one. It's also one of the only Chinese horror movies that I've dared to watch more than 3 times. That's how much I enjoyed this. It's the definition of madness. I keep watching this movie hoping that every time the ending will just get better. In this film, a girl and her boyfriend, who is cheating on her with another girl who has this pathetic lapdog constantly following her, all travel to her family business in the Chinese countryside. This business is a hybrid barbershop and motel. Trust me, this gets more insane. Her father owns and operates both businesses alongside an assistant, and also staying the night is a strange man who appears to be a poacher. However, the ghost of the girl's mother haunts the place, looking to take revenge on anyone who's poaching small animals from the area, and also against anyone who would dare do any harm to her daughter. Except this is a Chinese horror movie and no ghosts are allowed, so the ending is explained by something so ridiculous that only a Scooby-Doo cartoon could do it justice. This movie comes from a production house that is famous for making movies like this. Titles such as Haunted Graduation Photo, Haunted Dormitory Marionette Teacher, and The Haunted Cinema are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to ridiculous horror films from China. But nothing could be more insane than this title, and that's saying something. So there it is. There are my 5 comfort horror movies. Was that what you were expecting? Perhaps 1 or 2 of those titles might have been what you were expecting, but maybe a couple of the others weren't. These are the movies that if I feel like just watching a horror movie that I've seen before and I want to be entertained, because you know that comfortable feeling, I'll pick from maybe one of these 5 titles, or maybe another 5 that I might do in the future. You know, there's always a handful of very good comfort food horror movies. But what are yours? What are your 5 comfort horror movies that you will watch over and over again, especially the trashy ones? Like, it's really easy to say, yeah, I'd like to watch Jaws or Alien or the first Halloween movie over and over again. But what about those really trashy ones that everyone kind of laughs at you about, that you just hold dear to your heart? Anyway, I'm the Artie Dans and you are watching Shockmania. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you're new here. Press like if you enjoyed the video. Otherwise, I hope I could catch you next time.